Oh, yeah, sorry. Everybody has to consent to recording now. I forgot about that.
All good.
Zach, I'm letting you know you're muted, and yeah, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yep,
Yep.
you're back.
We're good.
You
That
guys go
mic's
right
nice
ahead.
and crispy.
All right. So I think we're ready. Let's
Brilliant.
do this.
Jen, do you want to kick us off?
So optimal world, I'm going to stay off mic, and I'm just going to make sure that the recording's coming through. I have your guys' conversation on my right monitor, and then I have the recording feed on my left monitor. So if you guys just want to go straight off the prompt list, that's good with me if that works with you.
Brilliant. Cool. So let's start with the first prompt.
Well, hey, hold on. We got to do some intros first. Let's set the stage here. So, hey everyone, Tori Callis here from Titl, joined with Ori and Zach. We're eager to get into our conversation here surrounding obviously the title world and real estate in general. So without further ado, Ori, Zach, please take it away. Introduce yourselves.
Zach, please go.
All right. Thanks, Tori. So I'm Zach Cammerdiner. I'm the Chief of Innovation and Strategy at Connecticut Attorneys Title Insurance Company, CATIC for short. And I'm wearing my absolute favorite garment today because it's cold here in New England. And I'm really happy to be here. Ori.
Hey guys, my name is Oreo Hine, co-founder at Titl. And it's an honor to be here, joined by Zach and Tori. So I appreciate the time.
Excellent. All right, guys. So Tori, co-founder of Titl, and pleasure to be joined with Ori and Zach here. So we'll get right into it. Why don't we start with the current kind of, I guess, real estate landscape in the United States? Obviously, rates are very high. Foreclosures are at a record high. We're seeing more foreclosures than in 2008. Things are looking a little scary, but I think there is some sun breaking through those dark clouds. Zach, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the home ownership is the American dream. You know, that's something that we hear in this country since we're little. And right now, real estate is more expensive than it's ever been. And because of the expenses involved with home ownership, it's starting to push out more and more potential homeowners. So, you know, what's at stake here? If we don't find a way to reverse this course, I think that the American dream is getting pushed, you know, further and further out of reach for more and more Americans.
And what do you think is one of the biggest hurdles into breaking into real estate, especially for the US?
I think right now, you know, Tori, I think you might have just mentioned this. It's the interest rate environment. You know, when interest rates are relatively high. I mean, by historical records, they're not super high.
They're fairly low.
Yeah, I came up in this business in underwriting. So I did not start off as chief of innovation and strategy. I started off as a residential underwriter and just, you know, on the front line, you know, doing the title production work that's necessary for, you know, enabling real estate transactions. And I've seen title searches where, you know, mortgages were, you know, were brought back with a title search from the 1980s, you know, and you're seeing interest rates from that time period, you know, 15%, maybe even higher. So when you look at it historically, it's not sky high, but you know, when you look at it over the last few decades, we've spent a lot of time, uh, you know, it was prior to the last crash in '09, where real estate, where interest rates were really relatively low. I mean, we spent about a decade where interest rates were hovering, right around 3.5%. I think the mortgage on my home, my wife and I, we've got about a 3.5% mortgage. Rates are double that today. So what does that mean for the average person? It's more expensive to borrow money, or if you maybe want to think about it a different way, you can afford less home, for the same amount of money that you're borrowing. So it's the interest rate environment that I think is causing the most problems. But we also have an extremely fractured ecosystem with enabling real estate transactions. That's something that I think we talk about in our conversations, is how do we bring efficiencies into the process and start lowering costs for all the stakeholders involved in a real estate transaction.
Yeah. I can tell you that that transactional cost was part of the inspiration that got me and Tori to actually build out this company. Um, Both Tori and I, when we closed on our first homes, got slapped with massive closing fees. Um, I can tell you I was not budgeted for it. I was completely thrown off that I had to spend thousands of dollars on settling legal fees, closing documents, all that stuff. And
How long
when
did it
you're
take you to close? How long did the process take?
Fantastic question. I think it took a month or two to
Yeah.
close, if I remember correctly. It's a
Yeah.
while ago now.
Yeah,
Um,
that sounds about average to me. Yeah.
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 And that was like the first question Tori came to me with. He's like, if we're working on blockchain, which is the concept of blockchain is to instantly transfer something. No intermediaries, no back office, it's all online and an instant. Why doesn't real estate work the same way? Why is there a massive settlement cost? Why does it take so long to process? And why are there so many people that sit in the middle? That was basically the first question we started with. Um, and I think what that comes down to is the system is completely fractionalized. You hinted on this, Zach, early, but it's there's so many intermediaries that take a piece of the transaction like every time you want to move or even validate a house. It just makes the process painful, especially for a first-time home buyer who doesn't know what they're doing.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think part of my frustration was the amount of pages I had to sign. I mean,
Oh
the
yeah.
paperwork you had to go through, and it's all very standard documentation. It's, basically a template. It's constantly reused, and you're paying these crazy fees for a lawyer to basically take a template, slap it on, a real estate agent to do the same thing, a mortgage broker to do the same thing. And, as you guys previously mentioned, everyone's taking a little piece of the pie here, and which is fine. It's fantastic, but there is a better, more efficient way to do it. And with doing so, we can definitely reduce those costs, reduce that friction, allow more people to use that money for a down payment on a home, as opposed to, breaking pieces off to everyone, as I said. So I really think that, Zach, you mentioned this earlier, is just getting the process a little more frictionless and more efficient will definitely help, new first-time home buyers and just people trying to break into the market. And that's one of the things that people fail to realize, as Ori said, is holy smokes, you get to closing and you're like, where are all these fees coming from? And they're hitting you from every angle. I know personally, I was hit with a crazy amount of closing costs, and I basically had 24 hours to come up with this, or my deposit would be lost, and basically, my nest egg would be gone. So I was very lucky and fortunate that, I had some support in being able to produce that. But yeah, I remember sweating bullets as I read over this document, and I mean multiple documents, and going, holy smokes, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But I think that's what, CATIC, Titl, everyone that's trying to be a trailblazer in this space is trying to do, is just create efficiencies, in these processes and processes in order to get the costs down. And, at the end of the day, the consumer has a little more control over their wallet and where their money's going. So, no, appreciate your guys' insight on that. And
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with everything you said.
yeah, and I think you know, we'll get into obviously a little more title and how title works, and how fractionalized it is from county to county to county, state to state to state. And I mean, Zach, this coming up the ranks more than anyone, I would say, is you're going to 5, 6 different databases, or, the property clerk's office, the tax assessor's office, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in order to amalgamate all this information, just to ensure that you have all the information to transact or close on a home. So I don't know if you want to speak on your experiences
Yeah,
in that
that's a
sense.
great question. So in title insurance, we care about the data. I mean, that's really we aggregate property data, and based on that data, I'm kind of oversimplifying here, but just to explain the process, we aggregate all this data about a particular property, and we take that information and we identify, well, are there any problems here with this property? Things that we need to resolve before, let's say, an ownership interest changes hands. So before the real estate closing occurs, we need to get our hands on the data about the property, identify any problems that need to be resolved, and we fix up those problems before the real estate transaction occurs, and we record another round of documents that memorialize the transaction. Um, but to your point, Tori, we've got to go to a whole bunch of different places to find the relevant data that we need to produce a title insurance policy. So that requires time. There's expense involved. We've got to review everything that we collect. So um, we see a lot of like we see a lot of legal problems that need to be corrected. These are things that, if people aren't familiar with title insurance, they may not understand just how much is going on before the real estate closing occurs. But I guess the main point that we want to make for this part of the discussion is that data is fractured. In Connecticut, where I came up, I'm most familiar with how it works here in the state of Connecticut. We're a tiny state, but we have 169 towns,
Wow.
and each town has its own set of land records, its own tax records, its own assessor's records, its own municipal departments. We've got to collect data from all these disparate sources and aggregate it before we can like work on the title, like do the curative work that we do that adds value.
So
Yeah.
why do you think no one's created something that's like a centralized solution then for the US? Like we all know the term like land registry, title plants, all these things. But when Tori and I started in this industry, we were a little bit baffled that there's no source of truth that stands alone and has everything in one place. Like why was that never invented?
I can only speculate on this, but as somebody who's worked in this area for what I think is a long time, but there's a lot of folks that have a lot more experience than I do. Um, but it's the way that the system evolved. Here in New England, we started as the original 13 colonies.
Yeah.
You go into our land records, you can go all the way back to the first land grant, from the state or the sovereign to the first private owner. And I just think that the land registry, and the tax records and the assessor's records and the court records just kind of evolved in separate silos. And when you have stakeholders who are responsible for their particular silo, I think it's really difficult to get a unified system that lays over everything, because you've got to get a lot of different stakeholders to agree to do that. We've got to collaborate with one another, and in some sense, in some real ways, we probably have to give up some control. I know that nobody's going to want to hear that, but I think that's the obstacle that's there, in order to get something more unified in place.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you guys think of that. What is
No,
your reaction to that?
I agree wholeheartedly. And I mean, there's 3,100 counties in the United States. And you had mentioned obviously the amount of cities that are in Connecticut. Connecticut's a little nuanced in the sense that it's city by city as opposed to county by county. And those are nuances statewide, I mean, and countywide. So we truly believe that obviously being able to unify all this data, aggregate all this data, create a digital land registry where everyone has searchable access, ease of access. They're able to view it in real time, see what's going on. We truly believe that that is, that's kind of Title's ultimate goal, I would say. But just obviously getting our feet wet and growing in this industry and realizing how crazy and how broken and siloed it is, as you mentioned, Zach, it's absolutely insane. And I think this goes back to kind of one of the issues of creating efficiencies in systems in order to drive down costs, because the man hours it takes to sift through all these separate databases and amalgamate it, review it, and cities in Connecticut are different, I'm sure, by the nomenclature, this, that, and the other thing. There's no really like real legend to say, hey, this is what this is in this state, this is what this is in this county, or this is what this is in this city. So, the ultimate goal of what we're trying to achieve here is to create something along those lines, where it's just unified, digital, searchable, accessible. And Ori, I'm sure you have your comments on that as well. So be curious to hear.
No, you said one thing where there's so many people that have jobs that rely essentially on this inefficiency. And I think this is going to be probably one of our biggest sticking points is people are scared of AI and blockchain getting mass adopted because it's going to change the way people work, especially in your world, Zach. But I think at the end of the day, you're always going to require a man in the middle. You're always going to need someone to validate the information before you can get a mortgage, a title policy, anything on those lines. And it's not going to be AI taking your job away. It's going to be you're going to have to learn how to use AI. And I think for us as the tech provider, we have to learn to create products that are easy to use. And for you and for companies like CATIC and the other underwriters, it's utilizing the tech in order to create efficiency. And I think for us that's the biggest focus. But I'd love actually to hear from the underwriter side, what is the biggest fear and what is the biggest opportunity with this kind of tech?
Oh, what a wonderful question. This is a wonderful question. So the biggest fear, I think, bar none, is AI going to take my job? Is AI going to replace me? Or, oh my gosh, if we allow an AI to work on that particular task, everything's going to blow up and the world is going to end. Clearly, I'm being, a little dramatic, but that's the fear. It's,
Absolutely.
AI is going to replace us. On the other side of the spectrum, what's the biggest opportunity? AI is going to enhance us. I've been
Absolutely.
thinking about this a lot, and I don't. At CATIC, we've come up with a responsible AI use policy, or an internal corporate policy for the responsible use of AI. And our bedrock principle is that AI is not intended to replace human judgment. So we think that anywhere where you need human judgment, you need a person to make the final decision. That person is now essential in that workflow. So
Absolutely.
even if you have AI in a workflow, I think as long as the requirement for the final decision rests on the person, AI is not replacing people in that workflow. You need a person to be in the workflow. And I think that's the regime that we're going to be living in for the foreseeable future in title insurance. And our regulators are really driving that. There was a model bulletin that was put out by the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. I think if my memory serves me correctly, it actually goes back to 2023, but it was after ChatGPT kind of emerged into the marketplace. NAIC put out a model bulletin for its members. So its members are the insurance regulators in each state. And this bulletin was about, responsible use of AI by insurers. And it seems to me, my interpretation of this bulletin is that our regulators are concerned about insurance decisions being handed over to an algorithm or to an artificial intelligence. Now, that's not to say that they're discouraging our industry from using AI. I don't think that's what they're trying to do at all. They're trying to encourage responsible innovation. So I think our regulators are really saying to us, title insurance, well, any line of insurance really, um, we're not standing in the way of innovation, but we want you to keep that human in the loop to make the final decision, especially decisions that affect consumers.
Yeah.
So I think the opportunity there is to embrace AI to bring in efficiencies, and enhance the human. I was thinking the other day, I think what we're trying to do here is we're not trying to eliminate people. We're trying to create
No.
superhumans that are augmented with artificial intelligence. And do you guys agree with that?
Totally. I remember
Absolutely.
early on when one of these AI tools came out with the ability to create videos and images, someone asked it, show me how humans will evolve with AI. And it created essentially a cyborg over time. It was a really cool video. But I agree with you to your sentiment, Zach. It's going to create a person who is optimized by machinery and by large language models, essentially. It's not going to create a robot. It's a person utilizing the robot. Um, and that's kind of what we've seen is like when you're creating this innovative tech, you're not killing a job, you're just saving someone a couple hours, or you're saving someone a bit of money or processing, that kind of stuff. You're taking away the boring stuff no one really wants to do, and you're creating the and you're creating an opportunity to focus on the tough decisions more.
Mm-hmm.
So we're hoping that that creates larger profit margins for companies. It creates a better skill set for the employees and hopefully a more interesting job at the end of the day versus just killing the job and putting a computer in its place.
Can I just tack on to what you just said, Ori, and talk about what you guys are doing a little bit using AI to perform a title search? So we'll just talk about it very simply. Using artificial intelligence to do a title search. What I predict is going to happen is we're still going to have human beings in that workflow. However, I think those people are probably going to be able to spend more time on the edge cases, like those really gnarly titles that, um, you know, your average title searcher, they've got a big workload every day that they've got to somehow slog through, and they know that that one gnarly one is there, that somehow they need to bang out all of their routine ones to get to that, and then hopefully come up with the right answer for the title company who's waiting on that title search. What I predict is going to happen is that we will be able to spend that searcher is going to be able to spend more time on the gnarly one, come to better conclusions and better solutions, and hopefully that will translate into fewer title insurance claims.
Yeah. And Zach, I think you hit the nail on the head there. And from just if I'm a title searcher, I'm going into my day and I know that I have this much paperwork to go through. Already I'm starting the day a little stressed and flustered, although it is my job, but at the same time, it's like now I can focus, with the use of AI, I can now focus on those gnarly ones, and it just creates, you know, less stress for me, less stress for everyone involved in the transaction as well. Because to your point, there's going to be less title insurance claims because they're able to focus on those gnarly ones. They're able to really drive in and give great opinions on that. And I think, another interesting thing you said was that the overseer of the title insurance agents or industry has essentially said, hey, there always has to be human intervention. I think that's the right approach. I don't know if you guys have heard, but in health insurance claims, what has been happening is they're using AI strictly without human intervention. And you're getting all these claims bogusly denied when in fact they shouldn't be denied, right? So they've lost sight of what AI is truly used for is, again, you guys both have touched on it, is creating a superhuman, creating efficiencies and not taking away someone's job. But the health insurance industry has kind of gone the opposite direction in, letting AI run wild and then just creating this backlog of claims that have been denied that are now being, revisited, and they're in turn spending double the cost, I'm sure, to revisit these claims and actually approve them as opposed to them being denied by artificial intelligence. So, no, great points, guys, and I think we're definitely headed in the right direction, and I couldn't agree more with Zach and Ori as well on the human intervention piece that's definitely needed to keep this well-oiled machine rolling and greased. Another thing I'd like to talk about is, with obviously the good of AI, there's also the bad of AI. And I mean, we're seeing it specifically in Florida right now, California, some of the larger states with a lot of real estate transactions, is the amount of fraudulent documents, the amount of fraudulent identities that are being stolen or assumed via AI video editing, via AI voice editing software. So I'd like to hear kind of, Zach, what the title insurance industry is saying about that, and how we can kind of prevent that or mitigate those risks.
Great question. Oh my gosh. We could probably do a whole hour on this
I
one.
was gonna say.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just start off telling a little story. I do a lot of education. I've been doing emerging market trend type education for realtors a lot over the last few years. And almost immediately when ChatGPT, I think was that late 2022. I mean, I'm like losing track of time. Has it really been that long since we've seen large language models sort of enter the fray? But my audiences were always captivated by this topic, and just I started to focus more and more on AI because my audiences seemed to enjoy hearing about it. And the more I got into it, the more I started using it myself. And one of the very first use cases for me personally was using AI to help me like give better education. And one of the ways that I would do that is I started creating images. Um, I use an AI that's dedicated to creating images. I won't say which one it is, but it's pretty cool. And you're typing into a prompt what you would like to see, and all of a sudden, bam, that thing is you might have to tweak your prompts a little bit until you can dial it in, but it's amazing what you can create with an AI today with images and video. And you know that really started to get my mind into this space. Okay, if you can create I want to say hyper realistic images and video. I mean, I have been on demos recently of companies in the industry that are using AI agents to make phone calls. And you're listening to an AI converse with a human being on a phone call, and except for maybe a few little glitchy things, you would not be able, you can't tell that it's an AI. All of these tools, if we can use them for legitimate purposes, education, trying to get HOA documentation from a condo association or something like that. Why can't fraudsters use this technology to create fake documents and fake communications? So that's really where I think, where what do I worry about? Fraud. I worry about fraud because it is just killing us right now in this industry, and I think AI is fueling that. It's a trend that's getting worse. It's not a trend that's getting better. So, I don't have all the answers. I'm one of the people that's out there trying to find them.
Mhm.
And I think we need to We need to embrace, and this is going to be oversimplified now, but we need to embrace good AI to be able to combat or fight against the bad AI that's being used against us.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Unfortunately, the guys who know the rules best are the ones who break them.
Yeah.
So
They're a step ahead.
AI blockchain, they're utilizing it much faster than we are in order to create these issues. Which it brings me to the next topic I wanted to talk about, but it's if we're using AI to create, let's say, clean title reports, clean data, and trying to centralize all of it, by using a database that's a blockchain, we're actually able now, I think, to create a database that prevents fraudulent filings from going in. And that I think that highlights A, the importance of clean data, and B, also the importance of validating it. So the moment, let's say, a title policy is issued, we're able to lock it down on the blockchain, creating a new timestamp on that block of data, and then saying if anything new is added, it has to get validated, because if not, you're not updating your block of information. And I think that's one of the big security blocks we can put in place in order to prevent that kind of fraud. Because Tori and I have seen cases, I'm sure you have too, um, of obviously fraudulent filings being put in, or identity theft being done, and then suddenly a new property deed is put in place. So with the block of data, with the data living on a blockchain, we can get alerts now. We can track if anything's being changed. We can see if a new mortgage is taken out on my name, or if my deed has been transferred to someone else's. Using the systems we have now, it's borderline impossible to do that unless you have a person spending hours on the file. With a blockchain, you don't have to wait that long. It's pretty much instant.
Yeah, and just to jump on that point, I know Ori and myself, we always get asked why blockchain. All it is a database. Yes, that's partially true, but again, it's one of the most secure databases in the world, and it's very visible to everyone involved in that transaction, or, as Ori mentioned, a timestamp needing to be updated, or a deed being restamped via timestamp. And that just allows us to securitize everything, has eyes on everything. You're not worried about someone going into a courtroom or a courthouse or the property appraiser's office or county clerk's office, whomever it may be, and filing something, that the person reviewing it goes, okay, yeah, no problem, we'll file this appropriately, and there you go. Next thing there's a secondary mortgage on your home, or a tertiary mortgage on your home, whatever it may be. So, yeah, Zach, I'd kind of love to hear your thoughts on, I know you've spoken on the subject. I know you're well versed on the subject, and you like the subject. So I'm curious to hear your insight on that.
Yeah, so basically what we're talking about is seller impersonation fraud. Someone who is impersonating the owner and fraudulently attempting to sell that property to an unsuspecting, we'll say buyer in air quotes. Really, they're a victim. And then it doesn't have to be in that context. There could be a fraudulent mortgage that gets recorded as well. And I just actually saw it was on Alta's News You Can Use. So anybody out there that's listening to this, if you're looking to sign up for just industry information, the American Land Title Association has a great list that you can sign up for, the news you can use. And the very top story today was about fraud. Refinance, fraud, and forgery claims soar, driving up title insurance losses. So
Wow.
this is on MPA is the news source here, but I'll just read the first paragraph. Fraud and forgery claims tied to mortgage refinances have surged, now representing over 40% of all title insurer losses and
Wow.
expenses, according to a new Milliman Inc. study commissioned by Alta. This is a really difficult problem for the title insurance industry right now, because it's relatively easy for someone to, I'm not going to say get away with this,
Mhm.
but at least attempt to get away with it. because as long as a person shows up at the local land recording office with a document that on its face appears to be legitimate, you can just record that document. The recorder's office is not going, there may be some variation to this around the country, because sometimes I hear about, one-off cases where the town clerk or the county clerk might refuse to record something that seems like it might be fraudulent. But generally speaking, it's fairly easy to just record something in the land records. And then we're trying, as long as we can find out about it, that recording, we can do something about it.
Mhm.
But a lot of this fraudulent activity is flying under the radar, and it happens before anyone's even alerted to the fact that a fraudulent document was recorded in the land records. So what do we do? What do we do about a problem like this? And that's where this is where the blockchain, we'll say industry, folks like yourself and others kind of have my ear, because, as somebody that is trying to find solutions to the problem, I think, if blockchain has some benefit that it can offer to help us mitigate the risk of seller impersonation fraud, or mortgage fraud, then I think as an industry, we should be listening with an open mind.
Yeah. And Tori and I have seen how hesitant people are to adopt anything that has the word blockchain in it, simply because it's correlated to tokens or NFTs and things on those lines. Obviously, those are iterations of what blockchain is, but I think fundamentally the conversation we're having is so different, and we're talking about the exact same tech. So obviously, it's always a conversation about education and showing people that blockchain or even AI aren't things to be afraid of. But at the end of the day, I think it's how do we integrate a new process into an old system without rattling the cage too much, I think.
Can I just maybe make I'll try to be quick, but to what you're saying, Ori, as far as my industry having an open mind, I think that there is a little bit of a stigma on blockchain in the title insurance industry, because meaning the industry, we've heard stakeholders out there in the past saying, well, blockchain is going to eliminate title insurance. As soon as that type of statement gets thrown out there, they're just going to click off, and they're not going to listen
Absolutely.
anymore, And the way I would like to respond to that, because I've heard that even recently from a stakeholder in the blockchain space, that there won't be any need for title insurance anymore, and I just vehemently disagree with that. I think it's a false premise, and the
Absolutely.
reason why is because blockchain is a database, just like the local land records. They're a database too. And when I was talking before about what title insurance professionals do, we're concerned with the data and how that data goes on to the database, whether it's the land records that have been around for several hundred years, or whether it becomes a blockchain at some point in the future. We do what we do in the title insurance industry before that data goes on to the database or on chain. Garbage in, garbage out. As Reese Lacasse at my company, he's the head of our IT department. Garbage in, garbage out. So as long as we have a situation where, if that data can go into the database with problems with chain of title type issues, there's going to be a need for title insurance professionals, even if the database is a blockchain, because
Yep.
we do our part before the data goes on chain.
Absolutely.
Did I say anything there that you guys disagree with, or maybe have a different
No.
perspective on?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, and again, it's a tool to help mitigate, title insurance claims. And again, it's about the clean data going in, being insured, being double checked by professionals like yourself, and companies like CATIC, and fixing those issues when they do get through the gate, so to speak. So listen, title insurance is always going to be needed. Everything like that is always going to be needed. And again, it's one of those things that people try and, I guess, disrupt. Um, I just think it's a term to disrupt certain industries when
You know,
there's no merit to it.
and I think if we could, if the industries could work together more, if we could maybe focus a little less on like, well, I'm going to eliminate you and I'm going to eliminate you. If we come together, I think that we might see adoption happen more quickly. It's like I was saying before, there's a lot of stakeholders that have a stake in a real estate transaction. I think the way we make progress is we've got to get those stakeholders to come together and collaborate. And one way that that gets frustrated is when we're pointing fingers and saying, "Well, you're going to be gone." People tend to dig in their heels at that point, and the conversation isn't as productive as it should be.
Totally.
Agreed.
I don't think there can be a world where there is a digital land registry where everyone can actually collaborate that doesn't have insurance or lenders working on it actively. It would never exist because there's no way to validate new information if you take that away. There's no way to say if there was a human error when there was a human in the middle, then you're on your own. Because that's kind of how blockchain works. If you accidentally send an NFT or a token to the wrong wallet, it's gone forever. It's out of our hands. You can't have a system that works like that. You need an auditor almost or an intermediary that sits there and says, approved, it's true, go. If you don't have that, you create a flawed database. So I think there will always be a need for the underwriter. There will always be a need for the lender to be there and to validate those transactions, because if not, you kill it.
And the town and county recorder as well. I see them as the ultimate gatekeeper, and I envision that we're going to need those gatekeepers there to protect the data that goes on into the system.
Well, yeah, so that's why we started when people used to ask us why you're using the blockchain. This was like our first answer led to this. It was you need a validating node to come from all these parties. So you need a title agent to stamp off on the new documents. You need an underwriter to approve the historical data. You even need a clerk to upload it in the first place.
Mhm.
So these are all in blockchain you say nodes, but it's all parties that have to say approved before any of this happens. And no tech can replace a physical clerk. No tech can replace an underwriter. It's just going to make it cheaper and faster.
Yeah.
But all it does is make all it does is make the transaction faster at the end of the day. It doesn't kill a job. It doesn't replace the need for any of these parties. It just makes them faster.
Faster, safer, cheaper. And I think that's what we're all trying to accomplish, in our respective industries and what we're doing. But again, everyone's so caught up and Zach, you said it correctly, where we got to stop pointing fingers and saying we're taking your job, and come together in a collaborative environment and understand that all we're doing is creating efficiencies and making the industry better, safer, stronger.
Let's make it faster, cheaper, and more secure for everybody.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
We can all agree on that. I think we'll get somewhere.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. All right, guys, I think we hit every nail there.
You guys made that incredibly easy for me. Oh my Lord. Thank you guys.
Awesome.
Anytime I was
Good.
about to hop in, I guess, okay, I guess one thing that wasn't addressed entirely, but, and I guess it's a good closing piece if it works with y'all, is there were a couple times in the conversation of like, in order to actually move on to new tech, you have to, one, give up a little power, and two, at least how it's looking for is where it's looking like, something like title, something on the blockchain. But this is more for you, Zach. Something we've run into a lot is that people hear blockchain and people immediately think crypto. They immediately think a scam coin. How do you think a company like Title is going to bridge the gap between, okay, we need you to give up a little bit of your power in the transaction by moving on to a digital land registry and sign on to, we're also going to use blockchain? What do you think is going to push the layman over the edge to buy into it. You know what I mean?
Create something that works so that when you show it to them, that there's no amount of theory and explanation that will match the power of a great demonstration of something that works.
Mhm.
So what I look forward to is just continuing to work with you guys on, trying to put together a 21st century workflow that works, and
Yeah.
we can demonstrate that to the players and the stakeholders in the market. Because I think if we do that, then it'll speak for itself. I think that as long as people can buy into the idea at that point that continuous improvement is a good thing, if we can show that there is a solution to the problem. So let's just say fraud is a huge problem. If blockchain is a solution to that problem, then I think if we can demonstrate that in real world live use, live use cases, I think that could be incredibly influential.
Yeah. No, and I couldn't agree more. And I think, one of the big things is obviously not changing, the workflow too much or really putting a wrench in the workflow because
Change is
people
hard for
that's it.
this industry. Yeah.
That's the thing, right? And I think that's what we're trying to accomplish, is making something that is, not out of their kind of box right now. It's fitting in the box and it's just making their lives easier.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think like I'm probably speaking on behalf of Tori and I, but I think one of the most proud moments we had was in the early days of Title when we did one of our first demos for a big title company. They asked to see how the tech works and how the product actually functions, and they gave us an address and they asked for a live demo. This was the first time we'd ever done a live demo, and within 4 minutes we pulled up a full property title report, full chain of title, tax code, lien, the whole thing. And when we showed them the results, they told us this took us 7 days to pull together. That was our first successful demo, and it really stood out to us. And then from that moment, we realized, okay, fine, the end product is what they want. Now, how do we plug it in a way that doesn't rattle the cage too much or change their workflow too much? Um, and since then, that's been our big focus. That's why we're working with people like you, is to find a way to integrate versus like you said, like get rid and kill the title insurance industry. That's not our goal. We just want to plug in and play together.
Yeah.
I think if we can create these real world use cases that what I think the ideal situation would be is if we could slip them into a live scenario without people really even noticing all that much, then that's a home run. And
Yeah.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, totally.
Couldn't agree more. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, that was great. Zach, as always,
Yeah.
appreciate your time.
That was fun.
That was very fun.
I
Thank you.
am happy to be here. Yeah, if you guys want to do this again, just let me know. I'm more than happy.
Listen, let's for the new year, what I'd like to do is like do something like this once a month, once every 2 months or something like that on a certain subject that's
Yeah.
coming up in the industry. So it's, something that we can discuss that's kind of needed at that certain moment in time. I think that'd be very valuable. And
I agree.
yeah, we'll definitely keep this rolling because I love the conversation and I think it's important to continue to educate people. And I know you're a
Yeah.
big proponent of that, is, educating the masses.
Yeah, we're
within
big
the
on
industry.
education at CATIC. So if there's an avenue to get the word out, like this one, sign me up.
Cool.
You got it. We'll
Yeah.
definitely do more webinars, podcasts. We
Yeah.
need to put more time into it.
Absolutely.
So I guess before we sign off, I'll just let you guys know I'm gonna book a plane ticket, and I'll probably just look to stay over the night before.
That's what
And
I think.
yeah,
we're
is that
gonna
what you
do.
guys are gonna do?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna do for sure is fly in the Sunday and then you head back home Monday night.
Yeah, that was my train of thought, was exactly the same plan.
Perfect.
Excellent.
And and legal is working on the draft. I'm just still waiting on our general counsel to get that done, but I'll just, I'll keep mushing the team.
Fantastic. Just keep us posted.
Yeah.
All
You
right,
got
guys.
it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate your time, Zach. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Zach. We really
Of
appreciate it.
course. Thank you guys. Take care.
Awesome.
I'll
We'll
talk to
chat
you
soon.
soon.
See ya.
Thank you. I'll see you.